Hi, gang. Welcome to Behind the Rhinestones. My name is Dana Dare, and I am your host. What we do here is we chat to burlesque and cabaret performers, find out what goes on behind all the sparkle of their life. Today, I am thrilled to announce another London-based performer, the wonderful Mx Cyanide. So, hi, thank you so much for joining me today, Mx Cyanide. Welcome to the show.
Very excited.
No, thank you so much for
Gonna get
joining. And this is the first time we've actually got a chance to meet as well, which is so nice.
yeah, I mean, I'm really terrible with kind of who I've met online and who I've met in person and like do I actually know people? And I've gone to kind of at shows and been like, oh, it's really nice to meet you for the first time. And someone will be like, oh no, we met like 6 months ago. And I'm like, okay, cool. Memory is awful, but yeah, it's lovely to meet you. Like finally, I feel like
Yeah,
you are one of those online folks that I've kind of chatted to a little bit, but yeah.
it's nice. I definitely feel like I've liked your stuff for ages, seen you like online for ages, but yeah, there's so many people that you just like you'll respond to their stories and like their stuff, but like that's it. Especially because
Yeah.
you're primarily down in London, right? Is that
I
right?
was, yeah. Yes, I was for about 10 years, but I just moved out of London, so yeah, not
Hmm.
too far, but still in the south, but yeah, really not close to you, not local to you.
No, I am a fair trek away. So yeah. Um, Amazing. So we'll just kind of get cracked on. I always like to ask people the same when we get started because I think it's interesting. So how
Mhm.
did you find your way to burlesque?
It's I think it's probably like a similar story to like a lot of people. I actually just got bought some classes by an ex-partner of mine because I was interested in it. Um, and yeah, took a few classes and kind of haven't stopped. Before I did burlesque, I used to model a lot, and that was like before I transitioned, and that was kind of my full-time gig for a while. And I just have always liked to be doing something creative, even if it's not like the main focus. Like I've always liked to getting into something like that. But yeah, at that time when I was kind of modeling, I was into like a lot of vintage aesthetics and stuff like that. And so I feel like that was kind of the segue. But I've also always been in kind of like alternative spaces and stuff like that. So it, it, it kind of naturally found me there. But yeah, I got bought a few classes from an ex-partner at a burlesque school in London that is no longer running. And that's it. Didn't stop. But that was about
Nice.
nine years ago now.
I love how there's such a Venn diagram with like the kind of vintage aesthetic world and then
Yeah,
ending up in burlesque. I feel like that's yeah, it may as well be a circle at some point.
that's it. Like there's loads of things that seem to kind of overlap with burlesque at some point. Like you have kind of vintage people who are into vintage aesthetics, people who are into like alternative music, people who are into like kink, like loads of stuff. It seems to kind of all like overlap and then meet in the middle at burlesque that seems to be like a big mesh of everything.
Yeah. All the weirdos. That's where we hang out.
That's it.
So, I imagine 9 years you've been performing. I imagine your style has evolved and changed as it tends to do. Um, what would you say your style is now compared to like when you started?
So it's actually kind of there's been a bit of a weave in and out. So when I started, my first act was actually kind of quite weird. I've always had influences of like alternative influences of circus skills, kind of strange concepts, freak show, things like that. There's always been like elements of weird in whatever I do.
Mhm.
Um, but I feel like now I've got more kind of skills. I feel like I'm a bit more polished, but I do feel like it's always been kind of elements of classic burlesque with a modern or strange kind of twist. Like I like to stay true to kind of the roots of burlesque and the fact that it is kind of striptease and having that in there, but always with something different. And I think also with kind of my gender transition as well, I a lot of my acts over the years have had elements of kind of gender politics, queer politics, those kinds of things. So I, I it's always been kind of trying to stay true to the roots of burlesque, but also putting my own stamp on it. I like to create acts that I would like to watch myself.
Yeah. How has it been navigating being an active burlesque performer while transitioning?
I feel like I've transitioned in my life and I've also transitioned kind of through burlesque as well. I
Hmm.
I actually think that like that now that I have kind of um had more kind of physical transitions, I've had more kind of medical transitions, and that I am aesthetically kind of I present more true to myself now. I feel like now I'm more confident. I feel like now I am really able to hone in on the things that I really love about burlesque. I feel like I enjoy it a lot more. Um, I felt like I felt like when I first started transitioning and was still performing, I felt like I felt like a lot of my acts ended up being really focused on having some kind of political message. And whilst for a time that was really kind of cathartic and really, um, I think necessary for my transition as well. Um, now that I've kind of gone through that and I've gone through more medical transitions and my aesthetically in myself look more how I feel and I present how I want to present, I feel like I'm now creating acts now that are far more kind of celebratory and joyous, and I can really kind of enjoy my time on stage because I'm not kind of fighting with my body, and um I don't feel like I have to shout about the things that I'm going through because I've kind of gone, I feel like now I've gone through a lot of the mess. So I feel like my transition in life has kind of transitioned as well in burlesque because I feel like my performance style did really um end up mirroring what I was going through at the time when I started out transitioning, and it was all really messy and emotional, and I was creating real kind of loud and kind of quite messy and punk like performance to be like to try and shout about it. And I look back on that now and I think kind of my style now is far more refined and about celebration and about being myself in my skin that I'm in now because I don't need to do things like I don't need to bind. I don't need to um kind of wear I don't need to kind of avoid certain outfits or things like that for fear of either looking too femme or not being perceived in the right way or even trying to present kind of more mask. I do drag king acts, but I love burlesque because it's so showy. I love the kind of showgirl like elements of it. So I kind of I'm not shying away from that now for fear of like not being perceived as like a trans performer. It's been kind of multiple transitions throughout life and art, and I think it's all been kind of led me to where I am today. And there's so many facets to not just like my trans journey, but like trans people and trans performers in general that I think I'm so kind of I'm so grateful now for those people that allowed me to have that space on the stage, even when it was messy, like even when
Yeah.
everything that even when everything that I was kind of going through and that I was creating was kind of messy and loud and vocal and maybe a bit confronting for some people. I just look back on it and think now like I'm in that space where I can create work that I really love and I really enjoy, and I'm even like celebrating some of my old acts that I'm still performing. I kind of feel like even those have got like a new lease of life,
Yeah.
but I think I kind of had to go through all of the mess to kind of get here.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, which, like I said, it just makes me even more grateful for the people that have kind of put me on stage throughout. I could have seen myself equally kind of quitting for a time and going off and making all of the changes that I wanted to go through in life and then coming back. I think that could have been equally as kind of a possible avenue for me to do that. But I'm so glad that I got to kind of, yeah, transition both on and off stage is really what it feels like.
Like it's been, as you said, a messy but positive journey. Even when you're talking about it, like you seem like almost there's almost a sense of relief I'm getting from you that like you've got here and you're happy and it's great to be able to put that out on stage.
Yeah, for sure. I think where I'm really at now, like I think I wrote about it a little while ago, like trans people seem to be kind of when we're I guess spoken about in media or kind of in kind of conversations with, you know, producers or performers or whatever, it feels like the whole rhetoric around like being trans is you're either like fucked or you're fine. It's very rare to see like real trans joy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at the moment. I think don't get me wrong, it's not always roses. And as I said, I've gone through that kind of mess. I think there needs to be kind of space to have that whole spectrum of experience shown and celebrated. Um, because I think that's only when you'll really kind of get that understanding.
It's nice to see. I've not seen your kind of trans joy act like your kind of showgirly one. I've seen
Yeah,
pictures of it, but I've not seen it and I
yeah.
really want to see it. It looks like it's so much fun just from like the
It
pictures
just
and clips.
yeah, it I just wanted to make so just something really fun and celebratory and that everyone can kind of vibe with, and it feels like the kind of butterfly out of the cocoon moment, like
Yeah.
I'm here, like ta-da, like but but yeah, and it's really fun to perform, and I'm really enjoying kind of getting it out there. But it's so different to everything else that I've done. But it's so lovely to be able to do that now.
Yeah, because you're kind of in that space. Amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
Something else that you kind of touched on, I wanted to zoom back to was you do a lot of kind of sideshow in your performances as well. Is that a skill you had before you went into burlesque that you brought with you, or is it skill you kind of learned along the way and incorporated?
A bit of both. So I had a few kind of
Okay.
like a little bit of a background in kind of circus skills and fire before I did fire performance before I did burlesque.
Hmm.
Um, and then I kind of added to it along the way. I've done classes in like set of nails and kind of various other sideshow skills, and I've uh, learned a lot from being in like kink spaces and stuff like that. So it's always been yeah, as you say, the weird kids. Always been one of the weird kids. It's just uh,
I love that. What is it you like, or what is it you enjoy about performing sideshow?
I love that it is a real kind of it's a real easy direct way to like connect with your audience because there is
Mhm.
such a kind of visceral reaction.
Yeah.
I people either like absolutely like love it or they'll be kind of hands behind in front of their faces and stuff. And I think like it's such a it is such a great way to really just have fun with your audience.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I kind of have a bit of a joke with another friend that I can't help but if I'm doing something kind of like doing pain stunts or anything or doing like blockhead and I can spot someone in the audience that's flinching that I can't help but kind of immediately eyeball them to make them feel more uncomfortable. And I just yeah, just it's such a fun kind of thing to play with the audience. Just a fun way to be weird, even more weird than I was before. But yeah.
I know how to do a few things because I do fire eat. I used to do fire eating. I don't really do it anymore, and I know how to do blockheads.
Mm.
Um, but that's the extent of it. And I love watching it. But even though I know how some of it's done, I'm also a little bit of a hide behind my hands person because I'm like, but I'm hiding behind my hands while looking the whole time. But I'm also like, oh, I love it. It's so good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so you're obviously like you've talked about you're so grateful for people that have booked you. You have a wide variety of sort of offerings and acts from the sounds of things as well. But what is it that you look for specifically when you're applying for shows? Like obviously we all love the money. But other than that, sort of what is it that attracts you to apply for a show?
It's going to be a variety of things. So if I know of the person that's producing it, that's always a plus.
Yep.
If I know what they're like as a performer, if I if they have a show with, for example, like a strong like theme or kind of that I think that I would fit really well in, or if I look at their kind of previous shows and they always have like a really high standard of performers in there, diverse lineups, obviously. Sometimes even it's just if I'm looking to kind of perform with people that I haven't performed with or in places where I haven't performed before. Um, those are all things that I would usually kind of look for, or if it's something like I don't know, if it's something that is a really like off the wall theme and I can just have a experiment, like and play around with something new or get to kind of have a go. I did a show a few weeks ago now, a couple of weeks ago in London with Victoria Rose, who runs the Great British Striptease, and it was a show that
Yes.
was entirely Prince themed. So everyone did
Yeah.
acts to Prince songs, and I was like, I love Prince. This is going to be great. Um, but yeah, I think like there are so many real creative kind of shows and stuff happening. I think I definitely in the last like few years, I think I've definitely become more selective about where I'm performing, what I'm doing, where I'm traveling to, just purely for kind of like an energy and time basis, and also just making sure that I think I've had a few experiences over the last few years that have kind of reminded me that I think we like to think that because we're quite a small kind of close-knit industry and close-knit community and everyone is Um, I would like to think most people are more kind of liberal and understanding. Burlesque, unfortunately, sometimes does reflect the outside world, and there are spaces that aren't safe or aren't people aren't kind of considering, performers' well-being and safety, and um, the fact that we are all, whilst we're kind of professionals, we are also people at the end of the day. Um, so I think for that, I yeah, kind of try to be more deliberate and intentional with what I'm applying to and where I'm performing to ensure that I'm aligning myself with spaces that kind of I would want to be in, if that makes sense.
Places that align with your values, I suppose.
Yes, yeah, and also I think producers who kind of take care of their performers in a sense, like it'd be quite easy for some people if you're, especially if you're in somewhere like London where there's um various different venues and various different spaces and you know a bunch of people, you could like a lot of people could say, yeah, I'm going to run a burlesque show, um, and say, put out a casting, a load of people would apply, say, yeah, I'm going to do just like a door split, and then you end up going, and it's, you're one of 12, and the producer's kind of running around and not paying attention, and
Yeah.
you kind of just there to be a like bum on a seat essentially. Um, a lot of I see a lot of shows come up where you kind of think if you had less people on your lineup, you had a bit more kind of intentional planning about how you were running your show, you could get, you know, people in, pay them fairly, have more time to look after people, have your show running a bit smoother. Yeah, it- I think there's a lot more considerations I think that go into producing than some people think. Yeah.
Not every performer should be a producer, but I think at some
Yes.
point every performer thinks about being a producer. Um,
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And
yeah,
I've produced like over the years a few times, and it's hard. It's hard. And I kind of did my last one and I thought, yeah, the show went great, um, really well. But I thought it's just me on my own and I can't, it's a lot. And especially now that kind of like less people are going to shows, people have less disposable income, all that kind of other
yeah,
stuff. It's a lot harder than people think, especially now.
yeah. I know that you are one of the admins for the United
Yes.
Burlesque United Kingdom page. I always get that wrong.
Yeah.
And I think part of what is happening there's conversations around best practices, and I think producing is maybe one of the conversations that we need to be having in that space.
Yeah. I think there are, not related to the Burlesque United Kingdom because this was around before, but there are separate like burlesque and cabaret producer groups.
Yep.
So I know that those do exist, and I'm in I think one of them. But I think there does need to be more of a conversation, I think, between performers and producers. I think producers do talk a lot amongst themselves about, what are we doing about this? Or like, where are you getting your insurance from? Or like, what's the
Yeah.
going rate for this? And there are those conversations happening behind the scenes with producers. But I think like, especially for newer performers, I can imagine that a lot of newer performers might fall into the trap of being like, oh, this is normal because you've done maybe, one or two other shows. And I think there definitely is, I think it's the kind of transparency is slowly kind of getting there. And I'm really grateful for that. And I did one of Bella Sims' online workshops a little while ago. I think it was the headliner one. And
Yes.
they was talking about, every producer will have their bottom line. They'll say like this is their bottom line might be like financial, it might be kind of what they expect for the show or what kind of whether they're looking for specific kind of types of performances, whatever. But I think the fact that people are now being more open in kind of what their parameters are, I think is really doing everyone a big favor as well because someone, can put out a costing and say, I can pay X amount, the facilities are this, accessibility is this, the rest of our lineup is this, or I've only got, white performers so far, so I'm looking for performers of color, or um, we would really love to have some gender diverse performers. People are being really open with those conversations. I feel like that's allowing people to make more informed decisions about where they're performing, but also to at least take those first steps to break down that feeling of because there are sometimes I think I was very guilty of it when when I first started transitioning. I think I was very guilty of being a bit not resentful, but a bit kind of unsure and a bit anxious and looking at certain shows and thinking maybe I'm not welcome there, or like I wouldn't apply to things because I think this is not for me, if that makes sense. But I think with people starting to be more um open with how they're booking, what their, accessibility is, who else they've had previously, or, what even with kind of like mission statements and things, people are like I can see more producers being like, we're actively trying to increase X, Y, and Z, or we really want to make this space. We're having conversations with whoever to try and kind of move things forward. So I feel like there is a lot more kind of transparency now, especially like since I started. Um, Producers are starting to be a lot more transparent. I think that's really um helpful, but it would be really great to, I think, have more kind of conversations between producers and performers about how people are booking, what they're looking for, or how can producers accommodate certain people, certain bodies, certain accessibility requirements, those kinds of things.
No, I think you're right. It's good to see people being a lot more transparent about what it is that they're looking for. That's what I was going to say. It almost feels like we are starting to run more like a business. It feels like producers are actually approaching it with a more business oriented mindset. And what you're talking about there, they have mission statements, they're having conversations about how to be more diverse. It's not just being run as something that they're doing for fun or it's just like a wee bucket split show
Mhm.
down the road. It feels like people are
Yeah,
bringing a level of like professionalism to the industry, and that's really encouraging to see.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think there's been kind of a lot of really perhaps like quite confronting conversations, but necessary,
Yeah.
um, for sure.
That have been bubbling away for years, I think, and it's good to see them actually starting to actually come to fruition the past few years, which is really nice.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So other than obviously what would attract you to a show, what is like your dream? Like, do you have a show in your head that you're like, that's the show that I want to do one day?
I mean, I my friend keeps messaging me and saying, when are you applying to be off? And I'm like, that's just not, I think as everyone looks at me off and they're like, if I could get there one day. But yeah, that would be like the absolute dream.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's a few kind of other festivals that I have been keeping an eye on and continuously applying for every year in the hope that I'll get in. So yeah, I've kind of been uh, I would love to do Stockholm Bellas Festival. I would love to do Hampton
Mhm.
Bridge. I would love to do
Yeah.
um yeah, Beehoff obviously. There are a few in the States that I love to Ohio, Hollywood, there's like loads, but I haven't got to America yet.
You've done a
Yeah.
few like international shows, and obviously you've listed more that you'd want to do. Like, what's your favorite thing about getting to travel and perform?
I think it's just like seeing not only I think lots of different places will have like predominant styles that people perform. So it's like nice to see like what people are performing in different places. I love like meeting new performers from, you know, different countries. It's good to see kind of, especially kind of theme shows if people are bringing their different take to it. Um, the traveling element is really great. I love to get out and see new places. But it's just that growing sense of community, I think. I think it's really kind of nice to because a lot of festivals I think are more like networking things, if that makes sense. Like
Yep.
it's less like you're kind of going to do a gig and then you're gonna go home or stay in a holiday, premiering or like, and then, get the train home in the morning. Like it's, because the producers who do festivals will obviously put on things like, like markets or brunches or like mixers or things like that. And I think that's the best kind of thing about festivals is they get to meet other performers that you wouldn't meet normally. I don't.
That's the thing that I love the most. And just seeing everyone's creativity on stage and how it's so, because let's be honest, if you're going to a festival, you've been picked out of a number of
Yeah,
applicants. So
yeah, yeah,
everything that's on that stage is like of a certain quality and like creative in some way because the producer wants to have different acts. So yeah, I
yeah.
always walk away from festivals feeling very like inspired.
Yes, yeah, yeah, definitely.
So kind of doing a bit of a switch into less cheery, happy stuff. You've kind of hinted at it, yeah, you've kind of hinted at it earlier, and we don't need to spend too long talking about this if you don't want to, but obviously, relatively recently, you faced a lot of shitty, and that's me being polite about it, comments and backlash from a venue owner from a show, I believe, which
Yeah,
spiraled into
yeah,
so much more, which I can
yeah.
imagine was extremely stressful. Like, how was that whole situation, and how much did it impact you in that point about being a performer? Did you have any second guesses about still doing this, or were you very much like, fuck you guys?
Okay. For anyone that doesn't know what happens, so yeah, I did a show last December at a venue in Bath, and it's a show that I've actually done 3 or 4 times before. The producer produces Untamed Burlesque in Bath and in Plymouth, so down in the southwest of England. Um, and they have actually been at that venue for years. I've done the Bath show, I think, 3 times or 4 times, and I've actually headlined that show, I can't remember, twice or 2 or 3 times. I've performed there quite a lot, so it's not the
Yeah,
first time at that venue. It's not the first time with that producer. Um, the space is really great. I've never had an issue there. And to kind of preface this, everyone at the venue, the staff, the producers, the production team, tech, everyone else was sound like great.
good.
But what transpired was a few months after we'd done the show, I think this was kind of a conversation between Violet May, who's the producer of Untamed Burlesque, and the owner of the venue, whereby I think they were probably discussing like booking new shows or like getting more dates in for this year because they
Yep,
usually ran about 2 or 3 shows a year. Um, and the venue owner basically said the standard of the show wasn't good unless it improves. We're not going to put on any more of this production. They said that they described the show as diversity DEI, so diversity, equality, and inclusion on steroids. Described a lot of the performers as being like not up to standard. The word that they used about my the actor we discussed earlier, my kind of joyous trans pride. Actually, it was the first time that I performed that because I was like, this is a really great welcoming space that I've done. Shock that I've done
yeah,
kind of so many times before, and I know that everyone that comes to our team shows is really sound, and I was like, this is going to be great. They described that myself as a performer and that act as grotesque. Um, it yeah, it was um it was a real shock, and I think I'm kind of I'm kind of I don't want to say like I'm lucky in that I don't experience so much real like direct transphobia. Like it does happen, and you do get people that are really just don't give a shit. Like there's kind of there's varying levels, I guess, of transphobia that I end up experiencing is like well-meaning mistakes, but this is was real like direct and unkind, and I kind of went through all of the emotions with it. I don't think it ever made me question whether I wanted to continue performing because, and the only reason I feel like that was because of the incredible amount of support I had from people. People messaged I had so many people kind of messaging me and kind of sharing my work and being like, this is not okay. Like, um, it just the amount of support that I had was probably the only reason why I didn't, I think, like spiral because I think it's quite the difficulty that I had from those comments was, I said earlier, this act is a real celebration. It's joyous. It's a big showy like burlesque, like that kind of thing. And I was like, this is like a real moment personally for me. And if I'd have got those comments without having the amount of love and support that I did have from people, it I think it could have put a real like downer on that as kind of like, should I even be in this space? Yeah, everyone was really lovely afterwards, and I had loads of messages of support and loads of people kind of sharing, and then the whole thing with the World Birthday offshoot thing where everything just kind of exploded from that. It's really strange because I think I have a few other performer friends who are also trans who kind of we were on the set when those comments came out. I was messaging a friend and he was like, I'm sad but not surprised, which is kind of I think a feeling that a lot of like trans folks felt when this kind of stuff was coming out. It's like it's sad that we're kind of used to those things happening, but also the kind of 180 of love that I had afterwards was really great. And I think I kind of don't mind being the center of that hoo-ha because it has sparked a conversation. I just really want people to kind of keep that momentum going because I think it can it can be really easy for people to kind of have that moment of having that conversation being like, look at this, isn't this awful? We all need to do better, giving themselves a bit of a pat on the back and then carrying on. I think it people still need to kind of keep putting in the work, and I would love to see like so many more, gender diverse performers on stage and that to just be the norm. If I ever get to a place where I have more time and money, I might make that happen. But that's a conversation for another day. I've got ideas, but that's yeah, that's something bubbling away for in the back of my brain for a few years now.
Excited to see if it bubbles up in the end. I am it. I remember all your posts on Instagram when it was all happening, and it's fucking terrible that it did happen. But you're right. If something is going to come out of this, the positive should be one, you got to experience the good side of our community where they came together. You got that outpouring of love. There is times where the burlesque community sucks, but there is other times where they really do come together, and it sounds like this was definitely one of those moments you could see it happening. But I
Yeah,
also do think that there is an element of we do have a tendency of reacting and then going back to life as it was.
yeah.
Um,
Business as usual.
Pretty much. And that really can't happen, especially not in the current kind of political climate we have. I mean, you aren't just trans people aren't just facing this kind of bullshit in burlesque, but just in everyday life, as you've said. So I think we have to keep that in mind and keep it. I do feel like we are getting a stronger sense of community recently, not just
Yeah,
off the back of this, but in general. And I really hope that that maintains its momentum as well.
that's it. I think. yeah, I kind of said it, meant like mentioned it earlier. I think a lot of people in burlesque do kind of, because we're in a more kind of liberal art form, that people kind of seem to think, yes, we're doing so much better than the rest of the world, but I saw a drag performer posting about it, like it's not, we're just a smaller group of people from the rest of the world, and so there will be pockets of people that are doing like really great stuff, but then there will also be pockets of people who will kind of sit by and either pat themselves on the back when they do the bare minimum, or they'll do nothing, which it's it's unfortunate. But I think when you find kind of the people that are there and on your wavelength, and that you really do kind of click with and that are doing the right stuff, I think that's like the gold, right? That's the
I love that. Have you done that act since that show?
yes, yes, I have.
Good.
I've done it
Good.
in Wales, in Pontypridd, with Lily Fleur for a LGBTQI History Month show,
Nice.
and it went down even better the second time round. So I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You need to get it on some international stages as well. Get it everywhere.
Well, yeah. Well, if anyone is watching this that books international shows or festivals,
This is what you need to do. You need to book it. Has to happen.
actually, I am taking it to Belgium in June. So I'm taking it to Bruges in June, which will be fun. Um, but yeah, anywhere else, Pride stages, have a car, can drive, have big feathers in a car. Let's do this, make it happen.
Yes. Should just be your advert. Have big fellas and car. Will drive. What do you think has been the biggest changes that you've seen over the 9 years of being in this industry?
Oh my God, so much. Um, I think just variety of performers that I see
Hmm.
now and nowadays, not just like styles of performance, but people from different um kind of backgrounds and stuff. I think is there are a lot more. I think diversity has been a real like push, and I see people doing real like incredible work. Like I think there was like a few specific kind of groups or venues or like bookers or productions, and it would be kind of the same performers at like one level up here, and feels like unless you were kind of either in with people, or you were a specific kind of performer that started in a specific place, or the chances of getting to that level
Yeah.
felt so much like so much harder. I feel like now I look at some like newer performers coming up now, and people are making space for so many different kind of performers,
Yeah.
but also like there are just like there are different avenues to kind of get into burlesque that are so much more kind of celebratory than just what it used to be, where you kind of would go to a burlesque school and someone would teach you how to do like a stocking peel and a glove peel and a corset removal and how to twirl your pasties and stuff, and that would be kind of it. And then you go out on stage and you do an act that would be very similar to everyone else. Like you have spaces that are fostering so much kind of diverse new talent coming into the space. I think it really is starting to become more open and like a space for kind of everyone. Like you have like Sadie Sinner's got the Black Burlesque School now, like always doing incredible work. You got House of Panther that's really working with kind of loads of real diverse artists, but also like artists from working class backgrounds. You've got groups like the Bit and Peach, more productions that are kind of focusing on performers with disabilities and those kinds of things. And like, I think the kind of you the ability to be recognized at like a higher level when you are a performer who is not a slim white cisgender female dancer from a specific background, like there's so much more space to be recognized on a higher level if you are not what used to be kind of the norm in burlesque, if that makes sense.
Yep. No, I know what you mean.
So I feel like, yeah, things are opening up, not just at the bottom, but at the top as well. And I think that's really exciting because it you can kind of look at big stages and think like, yeah, I could be on there one day, like I could do that. Like, yeah, it doesn't feel so aspirational. Well, not aspirational. What's the unattainable? I guess is the word. But yeah,
Definitely see a lot more, not just different bodies, but different styles being elevated as well, which is part of it. I think when I only started 6 years ago, but even then, there was this idea that to get booked, you kind of had to make classic stuff, and that wasn't necessarily my go-to. It still isn't. Um,
yeah,
and I also don't necessarily fit that look. Like corporate work's not for me. I'm covered in tattoos, piercings. I have blue hair.
yeah,
Like corporate does not want
yeah,
me. So
yeah,
I totally get it, but it's starting to feel like there's space for those of us that aren't very slim, very white, not covered in tattoos, don't
yeah,
have fake breasts. Because that was also a big thing when I started. Everyone that was the top of the game was fake as well, which nothing against. It's just if you don't want
yeah.
that. Yeah, so I do think you're right, there's definitely a lot more space for that at a higher level, which means it doesn't feel like you are hitting a glass ceiling anymore.
Yeah, for sure. But I think like also like opening audiences' eyes up to kind of the fact that burlesque is so vibrant and diverse and styles are so different and people's perspectives are so different and you know I think that's really it, opening people's eyes up to the fact that each different take on it is as valid as the next.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
totally agree. Before we wrap up, where can our lovely watchers follow you in the future? What are your sociables that everyone can check you out on?
So I'm most active on Instagram, which is Mx Cyanide if you're nasty, all one word together. Or I am on Facebook, uh, Facebook/ Mx Cyanide Burlesque. Um, I do have other things, but I don't really post there. I feel like I am far too old for TikTok. Sorry, guys. Um, and, that's it. Yes, mainly Instagram, and I will post kind of where I will be performing and stuff on there, all my links, all those other things. That is it, I think.
Amazing. I hope everyone follows you and gets to see you. Um, Thank you so, so much for joining me. I really enjoyed this conversation and thank you for being so open and vulnerable in this conversation as well. I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, thank you so much for having me, and it'll be really nice to meet you like in the flesh soon as well.
I'm so excited.
Sweet.
Bye.
Thank you.